the noise just kind of disappears very quickly.
Exactly.
What you are left with is a remarkably tense but very clear picture of what is actually happening on the ground.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are filtering out the endless social media speculation to look at exactly where traders are putting their capital to predict the immediate future.
And we have a massive spread of sources today to go through.
We really do. We are tracking that literal ticking clock on the global conflict in the Middle East, obviously. But we're also looking at a billionaire's courtroom diary reveal, which is wild.
Oh, that one is fascinating.
Yeah, and we're checking how government gridlock might entirely ruin your May travel plans. And just because, human attention is a fractured thing, we're also tracking the massive liquidity flowing into tonight's NBA playoff action.
It's quite the mix.
It is, yeah. But to start, though, we need to understand the underlying mechanism here. Like, why are prediction markets functioning as such a valuable lens for understanding current events right now?
Well, it fundamentally comes down to the mechanics of financial incentives, right?
Yeah.
When you read an op-ed or listen to a talking head on TV, you are consuming an opinion.
Sure.
And, opinions cost nothing to produce. But in a prediction market, traders are risking their own capital on an outcome.
Right. They have actual money on the line.
Exactly. They have a direct financial mandate to be as objective, fast, and accurate as possible. They really cannot afford to bet on what they want to happen.
Right.
The market forces them to bet on what the data indicates will happen. So the result is this aggregated real-time probability engine.
Which brings us to the heaviest, highest volume market on the board right now, which is the April 30th U.S.-Iran deadline.
Yeah, the volume here is just staggering.
It is. And just to set the baseline for you as we dive into these numbers, I need to make this explicitly clear. We are objectively reporting the data from these prediction markets regarding the U.S.-Iran conflict.
Right. Absolute neutrality here.
Exactly. Neither of us is endorsing any political or military viewpoint. We're just the messengers reading the math. Because what makes this data so stark is that the market does not care about the geopolitics,
Not at all.
It has no political compass. It's a completely ruthless math equation looking at satellite data and troop movements.
And that objectivity is crucial here. So we are looking at the PolyMarket platform, which operates globally on crypto rails.
Yep.
Meaning it captures this vast international demographic of capital. And the specific contract is titled, Will U.S. Forces Enter Iran by April 30?
And the volume on this single question has surpassed $270 million.
Which is, it's unprecedented for a short-term geopolitical contract like this.
It's massive, and the probability has surged to an overwhelming 96.5%.
Right.
Now, we need to explain what that percentage actually represents mechanically for anyone new to this. A prediction market is essentially a financial seesaw.
That's a good way to put it.
Thanks. So for every trader betting yes by purchasing a share at 96.5 cents, there has to be someone on the other side willing to risk 3.5 cents on no.
Yeah.
The fact that the seesaw is stuck at 96.5% means that globally, almost no one is willing to risk even 4 pennies on the idea that this event will not happen.
Right. And that extreme confidence is tied directly to the resolution criteria of the contract, the yes trigger.
Because they aren't betting on, World War III breaking out tomorrow, right?
Exactly. Traders are not betting on a massive declared war. They are betting on the technical legal definition of the word entry.
Right.
The market rules state that the presence of active special operations forces on land meets this specific criteria. So the liquidity is overwhelmingly betting that the ongoing tactical rescue operations for downed air crews will trigger this legal definition before the midnight cutoff.
So it's basically like a contractual technicality.
Yes, very much so.
Traders aren't betting on a declared war. They are betting on the technical legal definition of entry being triggered by a highly specific rescue mission, parsing whether a boot physically touches dirt.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how it transforms our understanding of how intelligence is gathered and priced.
Right.
We are watching $250 million function as a real-time crowdsourced intelligence gauge on tactical military escalation.
Because the people participating in this market aren't just, casual observers clicking buttons on their phones.
Yeah. Oh, no, not at all. You have defense analysts, geopolitical risk consultants, and algorithmic bots scraping maritime transponder data and flight paths.
Wow.
And they're all feeding into this single percentage. Consider the implications of that 96.5% holding steady.
Yeah.
It tells us that the collective intelligence of the market, which incorporates all of those leaks, the movement of logistical support ships, the satellite imagery,
What? All of it?
has reached a near unanimous conclusion. The market isn't pricing in a theoretical plan. It is pricing in an imminent physical reality.
Okay, so we just spent a few minutes breaking down how a market prices hard. Physical intelligence, right, like satellite data and logistics.
Yeah.
But what happens when the intelligence you are trying to price isn't physical at all?
That's where things get really messy.
Exactly. What happens when you are trying to price a narrative? Because that is exactly what we are seeing as we transition to this massive corporate conflict playing out in the Elon Musk versus OpenAI trial.
Right, the boardroom battle that is basically shaping up to define the decade.
Absolutely. So while the geopolitical conflicts occupy the global crypto-based markets, we are seeing massive liquidity flood into this historic trial.
Yeah, and we have jury selection and opening statements currently triggering extreme market volatility.
And the major shift today revolves around a co-founder's diary entry that was just revealed in court.
Oh man, this was huge.
It really was. Because of this single piece of evidence being introduced, Musk's probability of winning the trial jumped a massive 21 points,
Right.
moving from 40% to 61% essentially overnight. Traders are treating this as the pivotal moment for the future structure of AI, nonprofit versus for-profit.
That's a massive swing.
But here's where it gets really interesting, and I want to push back on this a bit.
Okay, go for it.
If prediction markets are supposed to be these hyper-efficient, cold, calculating truth engines, we have to ask, are these traders just being reactionary here?
I see what you're saying.
Like, can one single emotional diary entry really swing the outcome of a historic tech trial by 21 points overnight? Isn't that just as irrational as regular stock traders?
Well, it's a fair critique on the surface, definitely. But if you look at the mechanics of the legal system, it actually proves the market's efficiency.
How so?
You have to remember what is being priced here. Traders aren't just pricing the strict letter of the law. They are pricing the probability of a jury's decision.
Ah, right. Regular people.
Exactly. In a jury trial, the narrative is the most valuable asset in the room. A highly technical case about corporate governance, fiduciary duty, and nonprofit tax structures.
Yeah.
Well, that can easily overwhelm or bore a jury.
Yeah, people glaze over. But a diary entry, on the other hand, is universally relatable. It cuts right through the legal jargon.
Exactly. It reveals human intent. It shows state of mind and behind-the-scenes betrayal.
It's drama.
Yes, drama. It crystallizes a messy corporate dispute into a clear story of who promised what to whom.
So when traders see that piece of evidence introduced, they evaluate its emotional impact on the jury.
So they are betting on human psychology just as much as legal precedent. Precisely. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the stakes of that psychological bet are astronomical.
Yeah, because this trial goes far beyond Musk or a simple breach of contract.
Right. It is about the fundamental financial architecture of the future of AI.
Right, because if OpenAI's original nonprofit structure is legally binding in the way Musk argues, it changes the trajectory of the most powerful technology currently in development.
And conversely, if the for-profit pivot is upheld, the floodgates for commercialization remain wide open.
So that 21-point swing represents literally billions of dollars in future capital, reevaluating its risk models based on a few scribbled pages in a diary.
It's wild, but it really highlights how a localized human element like a jury's sympathy can dictate a macroeconomic outcome.
That's crazy. Well, let's stick with the future of AI, but pivot from the courtroom to the actual products right now.
Yeah, let's look at how the tech itself is being priced.
We're seeing some really interesting numbers on the Kalshi platform. And Kalshi is an interesting contrast to Polymarket because it is federally regulated by the CFTC.
Right, and it operates strictly in U.S. dollars, which attracts a totally different kind of institutional volume.
Exactly. So on Kalshi right now, the race for the AI king shows traders currently favoring Claude as the best AI this month, with a staggering 99% probability.
99%? Wow.
Yeah, it's locked in. Yet, the title for top-ranked AI model of 2026, so looking a few years out, is a dead heat between OpenAI at 45% and xAI at 33%.
Right, and that spread between the short term and the long term tells a very specific story about how the tech sector operates right now.
What do you mean?
Well, traders are crowning Claude for the current month because of recent context window updates, right? Things that gave it immediate, tangible utility for developers right now.
Yeah, people are loving Claude right now.
They are. But a 30-day advantage doesn't guarantee long-term ecosystem dominance. The 45% baseline for OpenAI in 2026 shows that traders believe their foundational model scale and their enterprise integration will eventually outpace short-term feature updates from competitors.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And it's not just software getting priced either. The hardware side is seeing incredible volume.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about the SpaceX launch cadence.
Yes. The market for above 10 SpaceX launches in April has hit a 95% probability.
Which is just insane to think about.
It really is. And what is fascinating here is how one market bleeds directly into another. Because SpaceX is executing this high-frequency launch schedule so consistently, it is driving massive conviction in the totally separate market.
Right, the IPO market.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There is a 91% probability that a SpaceX IPO will be announced before July 1st.
Wow. It's so wild that we can now track these generational technological leaps like AI models and rocket launches with the exact same live horse race energy as a sports betting app.
Yeah, it really gamifies it, but with real-world stakes.
Yeah.
I mean, 10 orbital launches in a single month used to represent a successful decade for an entire nation's space program.
Right.
By pricing that cadence at 95%, the market is confirming that SpaceX has transitioned from an experimental aerospace company to a reliable logistics provider.
They're just the FedEx of space now.
Basically, yeah. And that 91% conviction on the IPO shows that institutional money believes SpaceX has finally proven its business model to the point where it can survive the scrutiny of public markets.
Which really acts as a live vibe check for the general public, showing exactly which companies are winning the development race in real time, completely beyond the PR spin.
Yes, it forces transparency onto an industry that historically relies very heavily on forward-looking hype.
Right. You can't market your way out of a 33% probability deficit if your underlying product isn't actually performing.
Nope, the market calls your bluff.
Exactly. Okay, let's bring these massive billion-dollar macro trends back down to earth for a moment.
Good idea.
It is so easy to get lost analyzing aerospace timelines and global conflict, but, how does all of this data directly impact you, the listener, in your day-to-day life? Let's look at the 100-day shutdown watch.
Ah, yes.
Again, operating on the Kelshi platform, we are looking purely at the calendar and the math here.
Right.
And again, just to be crystal clear, we are taking absolutely no side on the political gridlock in Washington. This college is entirely neutral.
We are simply analyzing how the market is distributing risk around the federal calendar. The numbers themselves do not have a political affiliation.
Right.
They just reflect the structural reality of the legislature.
And that structural reality is pretty grim right now. The federal government has been closed for over 70 days.
Over 2 months.
Yeah. And Kalshi markets currently show a 46% probability of this shutdown reaching 100 days, which drags the closure all the way into June.
Which is just staggering.
It is. But the order book isn't just a binary yes or no, right? Traders can buy contracts for different duration buckets.
Right, you can bet on exactly how long it'll last.
Exactly. And the market favors a 95-day baseline, which is currently sitting at a 55% probability.
And the clustering around that 95-day mark is very telling. It indicates that the market sees a legislative breaking point right around there.
Like they literally just can't keep it up past that point.
Exactly. Traders are analyzing when the compounding pressure of unpaid federal workers and paused government contracts will finally override the political stalemate.
And this translates directly to your upcoming weekend and travel plans. Like, if you are planning a trip for May, this 55% probability is the absolute best public signal you have for anticipating severe TSA wait times at airports or widespread national park closures.
Yeah, you really don't have to guess anymore.
Yay, you don't have to rely on a travel blogger's opinion or hope for the best. You can look at the financial consensus of traders who are betting heavily on those services remaining offline.
This is where prediction markets transition from being these niche gambling hubs or tools of macro analysis into essential everyday utility tools for the public.
It becomes a leading indicator for managing your own life logistics.
Exactly. Whether you're trying to catch a flight, watch a game, or understand global energy hedges, it's all there.
Well, speaking of watching a game, there is a pretty jarring juxtaposition here.
Oh, for sure.
Because on the exact same platform where people are hedging thousands of dollars against a 100-day collapse of federal government services, massive retail volatility is flooding into tonight's NBA playoff matchups.
It's quite the tonal shift.
It really is. You have the Knicks versus the Hawks, the Raptors versus the Cavs, On a macro level, the overall championship favorite is the OKC Thunder at a 51% probability.
Right.
But on a micro level, the heavy volume today, the smart money, so to speak, is leaning heavily on the Minnesota Timberwolves to close out their series tonight.
Yeah, the volume there is spiking.
So what does this all mean? How do you balance the gravity of a 70-plus day federal shutdown with the casual, high-volume betting on a basketball game happening on the very same platform?
Well, this raises an important question, right? It can definitely feel like cognitive dissonance.
A little bit, yeah.
But it reveals a fundamental truth about where this technology is heading. Probability is becoming a universal language.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if you are trying to understand the impact of a point guard's sprained ankle on a playoff series, a senator's holdout on a spending bill, or the movement of a naval fleet. They are all just variables in a risk equation.
So the platform doesn't judge the gravity of the event at all?
Not even a little bit. It simply commodifies the information and prices the likelihood of the outcome.
Wow. Historically, you had to fragment your attention. Right. You watched a sports network for the game, you read a foreign affairs journal for the geopolitical conflict, and you just crossed your fingers when you showed up at the airport.
Exactly. Now, it is all centralized into a single metric of probability, the consolidation of risk assessment.
It allows the public to view global stability, travel logistics, and evening entertainment through the exact same analytical lens.
It really does.
That is an incredibly clarifying way to view the data. Okay, let's pull all of this together and recap this April 29th update.
Sounds good.
Today is undeniably defined by a sense of high-stakes finality. We're looking at the 24-hour countdown for the April 30 U.S.-Iran deadline, which is currently anchored at that massive 96.5% probability for tactical physical entry.
Yep.
We have dramatic narrative shifts in the OpenAI trial driven entirely by a single diary entry reveal. We have a 95-day baseline for a government shutdown threatening your May travel plans. And we have massive retail action moving the probability lines in the NBA playoffs.
It is a remarkably dense day of data across every sector, really from aerospace to the courtroom to the federal budget.
It is. And the ultimate what for you, the listener, is that this deep dive proves information isn't just noise anymore. It is a living, breathing map of probabilities that you can use to stay ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
And remember, with that Iran entry deadline just 24 hours away, you have the ability to track those minute-by-minute probability shifts yourself as that midnight cutoff approaches, if you want.
And having that level of clarity is certainly empowering. But, I want to leave you with a slightly different angle to ponder as you watch these specific numbers fluctuate today.
Okay, lay it on us.
We have spent this entire deep dive discussing how these markets reflect and price reality, right?
Right.
But consider the logical endpoint of this mechanism. If we can now wager on the exact date of military movements, the impact of courtroom diary entries, and the duration of government shutdowns with such high financial stakes, what happens when these prediction markets stop merely predicting the future and start financially incentivizing the decisions of the generals, the CEOs, and the politicians who are making it?
Oh, wow. The observer effect, but with billions of dollars attached to the outcome.
Exactly. When the prediction itself becomes the motivation to act. When the market gets large enough, it stops reflecting the weather and starts, seeding the clouds.
That is a staggering thought to end on, and definitely something to chew on as you watch those countdown clocks today. Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us. We will catch you on the next one.